Wow. Okay. Thank you for that. Um, hey, Alex, thank you for that. I like that little sprightly kind of song there. And I was interrupted due to the technical transition between cameras that we were using in this very advanced live presentation today. And when I changed back, I didn't get a chance to say thank you to Sandra. She knows darn well that I hold Simple Faith as dear to my heart. I know it just struck me when we first. I've talked about this before. I think it's a lovely song, and I think her singing it is way cool. So thank you, Sandra, for choosing that one for today. So this is the reflection period of our order service, and I told you in the preview in the digest that I was going to share some sweet, maybe sad, some funny, maybe perplexing moments with you today, like my memory of my first service, standing at the end of that BHK walkway and greeting people as they arrived. And I remember being gentle as I touched the hand of an older woman and said to her, "Good morning." And then she looked up at me and said, "Well, I see our new minister is driving a Mercedes. I don't know what to think of that." I remember my response was to smile at her in silence. I was wholly unprepared for that comment, particularly because I was the new minister and I was driving a 2008 Dodge Nitro. As I collected myself, as I collected those snippets over these last 2.5 years, all of them seemed to be great for sharing maybe at some future KUUF potluck at the Marsden Center, or maybe anecdotes at some 7+ supper. But they didn't feel to be holding up as an organized body for a final sermon or reflection at a Sunday service. So I went in another direction, and actually a pretty wildly different direction. I chose a 25-year-old sermon about ministry from a very well-known UU, a man named Bill Schultz, the Reverend Bill Schultz. Bill, many of you might know, has been the president of the UUA, has been the executive director of Amnesty International, and then came back to be the executive director of the UU Service Committee. I'm not sure if many of you know this, but he also has a connection to this fellowship in that he is a very good friend of Dan Boyce, who many of you know is the son of the founding member of this fellowship, Jim Boyce. Bill Schultz is a really sharp guy. I think in his life, he's probably been perpetually the smartest guy in whatever room he lands in. For better or worse, during my tenure, I've always written my own Sunday talks, and I always find the topics as I went along. Sandra and Martha and Miriam will sometimes know in preparation for the services, I don't find them until really too close to the service, but I find them. So it is surprising to me, it became surprising to me that I'm ending by reading somebody else's words. But I really like Bill's thoughts here. And again, I've already declared he's still the smartest guy in this room. So here are the words from Bill Schultz in his 1997 sermon at that year's General Assembly's version of the Service of Living Tradition. He titled this talk, "Too Swift to Stop, Too Sweet to Lose." Here's Bill's words. When I was a little boy, 5 or 6, I had a fantasy that when I was old and sick and ready to die, if I merely willed myself to live one more second, and then another, I might permanently stave off death. This fantasy was akin to another one of that era, that if I could be privy to every spoken conversation in human history, the secret of life would be revealed to me. A decade and a half later, having, I thought, discarded both these childish fantasies, I decided to enter the ministry. I did so because in the ministry, I presumed that I could unlock death, unravel life's mysteries. Now, anyone who takes these two goals as reasons for entering the ministry is, I'm afraid to say, bound to be disappointed. After all, when it comes to death, ministers lose 100% of their clients. As the clergy person said to the congregant who asked, where do we go when we die? The minister responded, oh, I suppose to the exquisite bliss of the Lord, but let's not talk about such unpleasant matters. And as to the mysteries of life, they are subject to considerable debate. I have always loved the Sufi tale of the dervish who spent many years perfecting the words for truth, saying them the way his tradition taught him. Yahoo! He incanted every day. Yahoo! He said over and over again, his heart filled with purity, and he knew that only the pure of heart could walk on water. But one day he heard a cry from the far riverbank. Yuha! Came the cry. Yuha! Yuha! The dervish scowled when he heard this chant. That poor fellow is mispronouncing the name of truth. He thought to himself, and then borrowing a small boat, he set off across the river, rowing strenuously to set his opposite number straight. When he arrived at the far bank, he found the derelict dervish shouting, Yuha! At the top of his lungs. My friend, he said, it is my duty to tell you that the correct way to speak the word of truth is not Yuha, but Yahoo. You will never become pure of heart and walk on water if you keep Yuhaing, only if you start Yuhaing. I don't know if I screwed that up there, but anyway, thank you, said the other dervish. And as the first master rode back to his home, he heard a few gentle yahoos emanating from the far bank. The wise dervish smiled. Now he's got it right, he thought. But then there was a long silence until suddenly, much to his dismay, he heard once again from the far bank, Yuha! Yuha! The first dervish shook his head, thinking about the perversity of humanity and its persistence in error. But then, to his utter astonishment, he saw the dervish from the far bank coming toward him, walking on the water. When the second dervish arrived, he looked sheepish and confused. I'm sorry to trouble you, my friend, he said, but I keep forgetting the name of truth. One more time. Won't you tell me? So death is defiant and truth is elusive, but there is one thing which every one of us can do, and that is to be present at their disclosure. Remember, Bill, I'm interrupting here. Remember, Bill was the executive director of Amnesty International for this next part. Bill continues, the work I do brings me into contact with the very worst impulses we can imagine. When the Taliban in Afghanistan sever the hands of children accused of stealing food for their starving families, or the thumbs of women caught wearing nail polish, or when Chinese prison guards insert electric shock batons into the private parts of 15-year-old Tibetan nuns, when torture and disfigurement and political murder run rampant, none of this polishes the luster of humanity's reputation. But one remarkable phenomenon pulls me back from the slough of despond. Do you know what the most effective way to stop these atrocities? Military intervention? Sometimes. Economic pressure? Occasionally. But the most persistently effective way to stop people from acting like beasts is to let them know somebody is watching. Why is that? Why do these who seem impervious to other people's opinions nonetheless so often care about what the world thinks? Why do even the most powerful, brutal governments try to cover up their misdeeds? Why do the world's most worst dictators want to be perceived as humanitarians? Why do even madmen blush? Well, the answer has something to do with Jean-Paul Sartre's refutation of solipsism. The philosophical problem of solipsism is simply this: how do we prove that there is anything else in the world other than ourselves? How do we know that the not mere figments of our imaginations? The problem of solipsism has baffled philosophers for centuries, but Sartre offered a very straightforward solution. The way we know that other people exist and are not merely the stuff of our dreams is because when people look at us in disapproval or in anger or in affection or lust, we respond to their looks. We don't ignore them or remain indifferent. We can pretend not to see, but that very pretense reflects their power. The power of people's eyes is enormous. The power to shame, to embarrass, to bring justice. It is exactly that power of witness and presence that most of us in the human rights business rely on to call the murderers to account. And the power of that kind of presence, the power of the look of other people's eyes, works in individual lives as well. Only it doesn't just work when it comes to shame or anger or lust. It also works astonishingly enough when it comes to healing. Willa Cather said that what is any art but a sheath in which to try to capture the shining, elusive quality which is life itself, hurrying past, too swift to stop, too sweet to lose. That is the art of ministry too. But because life's spending is too swift to stop, our only option is to be present to its hurrying past. How we do that determines our success at this calling of ministry. The most difficult lesson for any minister to learn is not how to talk, but how to keep quiet. The most important thing for any one of us to know is that when people are in pain, they need hands as well as words. A caring presence, more than a clever explanation. Now, on one level, you would think this would be a relief for ministers to hear. When Senator George Norris was asked in the 1930s what Abraham Lincoln would do about the depression the country was currently facing, Norris replied, "Lincoln would be just like the rest of us. He wouldn't know what the hell to do." On one level, it ought to be a relief that ministers are allowed as much ignorance as the next person. But ministers are expected not only to have some special insights into life, but to be able to express them with eloquence. And we have been schooled to believe that the chief form of that expression is in words, when the truth is that the most profound form is often simply in a look, a touch, a quiet moment, a presence. Do you know why ministers get paid? For the same reason rabbis do. But long ago, rabbis did not get paid and had to work as carpenters and tent makers. One day, Saul, a pillar of the local synagogue, came to Rabbi Simon and said, "Oh, Rabbi, the most wonderful thing has happened. I have met a beautiful girl, Judith, and we want you to marry us right away. But I must make a living so that I can feed and clothe my own family," said the rabbi. "I've got 6 tents to finish. I can get to you 3 months from Monday." And so he did. 1 year later, Saul called on Rabbi Simon again. "A wonderful thing has happened. Judith and I have had our first child. Come, Rabbi, you must do the bris right away." "But I must make a living," said the rabbi, "and I have 12 tents to finish. I can get you 6 months from Monday." And so he did. But then one day, Saul came to the Rabbi Simon and said, "Oh, Rabbi, the most terrible thing has happened. My wife, Judith, is dying. I cannot bear to lose her. Come quick, I need you." And the rabbi said, And the rabbi said, I am so sorry, but I must make a living. No, no, shouted Saul. We need you now. Sorry, not 6 months from Monday. My wife is dying. I will pay you, Rabbi, an honest living so that you can be here when we need you. Sorry. Whether it be for that prisoner in a dark cell far away, or that parishioner in a hospital bed close to home, an innocent person unjustly accused, a 50-year-old out of work, a young mother facing cancer, a teenager flirting with suicide. Ministers are paid so that they will be there when they are needed, so that that which is too swift to stop appears. Ministers will be there, trembling perhaps, as confused as the next. Unsure of what to say or how to go, but present nonetheless. In all fragility, present to what is good and holy, desperately, achingly sweet, too sweet to lose. I practice this, but I probably should have read this sermon to myself before I started this process. But I'm reading it to you today to remember my work in service to this fellowship. I want to thank you all for letting me be with you as we were present together, as that elusive quality which is life itself went hurrying past, too swift to stop, too sweet to lose. Thank you all. Let's hear our second hymn.